You know, I gotta tell you, man, one of my favorite things to report on is the failures of these DEI consultancy firms because it's something that they don't ever want anybody to actually talk about. But I gotta tell you, man, it is a lot of fun. It is a lot of fun to talk about the failure of Sweet Baby Inc. in particular. We have an article here from That Park Place detailing just how bad Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn, Sweet Baby Inc.'s code-developed game. Yeah, that particular game is failing so massively. And granted, it never had a good release to begin with, but apparently it's lost over 70% of its player base in just 1 week of time.
For a modern gaming audience.
Yes, ladies and gentlemen, Sweet Baby Inc., that amazing DEI consultancy firm that tells you they do nothing and yet they love to put their name on everything, this particular company has decided to work on this game, Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn, because the former COO of this company that was in charge of this game decided to hire them. And then Kim Belair decided to self-insert herself, as you can see here, as a glorified female girl boss badass in this particular video game, because God knows you couldn't have a white female lead, even though that's what the developers initially had in mind. You can't have that. You got to have a strong female black lead. So let's get into this article, guys, from That Park Place. But of course, before we do, if you are new here, just consider hitting that subscribe button. I would greatly appreciate it, and like the video to push us out into that YouTube algorithm. Sweet Baby Inc. developed Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn, loses nearly 70% of its already anemic player base in just over a week. Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn, developed by A44 Games with the help of Sweet Baby Inc., although I really wouldn't call it help, honestly, considering, what we're dealing with here, and published by Kepler Interactive, lost nearly 70% of its already anemic user base in just over 1 week since its release. Flintlock is, oh my God, look at those numbers, man. Wow, that was a jump scare. Holy shit, I was not thinking it was that bad. Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn, released on July 18th and only had a peak concurrent player base of 648. Just over a week since the game release, the peak concurrent has declined nearly 70% to just 203 players, ladies and gentlemen. Yes, 203 players. There was more people playing Tales of Kinzarazao than there was playing Flintlock, Siege of Dawn. I mean, it is terrible. And it goes to show, it doesn't matter how much money you throw at a game, right? Tales of Kinzarazao was an indie-developed game that was partnered with Sweet Baby Inc., right? Not a lot of money in that game, still considered a failure. This game that has a lot more money involved in the development that I think it would be classified as a AA or even a AAA game. Sweet Baby Inc. is involved, and the numbers are still the same. I need everybody to understand that as much as they try to gaslight you and try to downplay the overall perception of Sweet Baby Inc. as a whole from the majority of gamers, let it be known that that is not the case. Gamers are absolutely 100% fed up with the bullshit that is involved with Sweet Baby Inc. We have spoken, there is no doubt about it, and every single Sweet Baby Inc. game that has come out since the revelation of Sweet Baby Inc. being involved has been a catastrophic failure. We're not even talking massive failure anymore. Now we're talking to the atmosphere fucking failure. That's the level we're talking about. The fact that you couldn't even break 1,000 players on a single player game on its opening day is asinine to me. That is insane. I don't care what you are. Flintlock, the Siege of Dawn is a massive failure. There is no doubt about it. 203 people playing with 100 people playing right now. I mean, that is pathetic. How can you be happy with this? But again, they're going to try to gaslight you and pretend like they are happy about these numbers, but let it be known they're not. And I guarantee you, you don't be surprised if you see an announcement for the closure of A44 Games or the absorption of A44 Games in some near future. It's not surprising that the game's player base quickly shrinking. While the game has mostly positive reviews on Steam, the most helpful review in the last 7 days is negative and tells potential players to avoid the game. Semi-literate Ape writes, the game feels unfinished. The store page describes it as Souls-like, and that's what it is, in the worst possible ways. Light on the build depth and variety, light on the difficulty, light on the content, and length of the damn game. I completed the main story, including all side quests, all Enki feathers, and all shrines in 11 hours. I played on normal, so maybe the hard difficulty is more of a challenge, but the big bosses were trivial. Even the final boss fell over pretty quick, and the story's nothing to speak of, and the game kept crashing for me. Thankfully, the game seems to save its state before exiting, even on a crash, so I never lost any progress. Don't get me wrong, I had some fun. I wouldn't have spent 11.6 hours on it if there was no fun to be had, he added. It's particularly satisfying to switch between melee and range combat relatively fluidly, or to shoot a suspiciously well-placed explosive barrel to clear a pack of enemies. But that fails to make up for everything the game lacks. Nevertheless, he concluded, overall, I think the game is criminally undercooked. The concept and the world had decent potential, and the combat isn't terrible either. So given a few more years of development, I could see this game being pretty good. Sadly, what we got was just a mediocre on all levels. I wouldn't suggest you pay more than $10 for this game. And honestly, that is pretty much where most Sweet Baby Inc. games fall, right? Most Sweet Baby Inc. games are not some of the worst games in the fucking world. Let's not get it twisted. The company might be one of the worst companies in the world by far. Their ideology is extremely racist, without a doubt. But in terms of the video games, they're usually pretty, like, I'm not even calling it decent. I'm going to call it subpar, below average, right? They're clearly made with diversity, equity, and inclusion in mind first, and everything else second. And that's what ends up happening, because now you have a character that is ultra diverse, right? The character has all the checkboxes made, but then by the time you checked off every box and came up with the design for the character, you're running out of time to actually develop the game. And then you end up having an undercooked mess, which is Flintlock Siege of Dawn. Then it says the second most helpful review also does not recommend the game. Nachit Dimion states the game is not terrible. It looks great, and I've had no performance issues. However, I cannot recommend it because the balance is simply terrible. The game can't decide whether it wants to be Assassin's Creed or a Souls game, so it veers wildly and unexpectedly between difficulties in a way that I found persistently irritating. He continued, most of the time, the game is Assassin's Creed, a fun game that requires little technical gaming expertise. In Flintlock, you follow the quest marker, parkour over obstacles that are clearly marked in white, or zip through rifts that give you an infinite amount of time to choose your direction. If you want to wander around, you find resources and hidden treasure chests. The game might look like more like God of War, but the writing in Flintlock is so dull that I don't want to make the comparison. Flintlock's writing is dull, like Assassin's Creed Valhalla dull. But from time to time, without warning, the game turns into a Souls-like game. The parkour in the Black Powder Factory, for example, is not really difficult if you haven't fallen to your death 1 million times in Elden Ring to get the thumbprint shield. You might not be used to missing your jumps. The game does not prepare you for the first boss fight, for example, which has 3 phases and requires good parrying skills. That's not a bad thing if the rest of the game had the same vibe, but it doesn't. But that's because what's probably happening is that in the beginning of this game, they tried to sell you on a false idea of what the game is going to be in the hopes that you would continue playing, right? Or not refund the game. So you might play this game thinking, oh, okay, I'm getting an interesting Souls-like game. And then once you actually get into the meat of the game, you realize you got duped. And that's the issue. So again, Flintlock Siege of Dawn seems like it had some decent things going for it. And it's quite unfortunate because games like this usually do. They do have decent things going for it that if they just were focused on creativity, focused on the story, focused on bringing something that's actually organic to the plate, they might have had something here. But unfortunately, they didn't do that. They focused on DEI. They focused on what was going to make them money in terms of a DEI consultancy firm. They convinced the developers, hey, this is what you need to do and pay us money for it. And the game ended up dying for it. At the end of the day, man, Sweet Baby Inc. has a terrible reputation and it's not ever going to go anywhere. And you're going to see more games partnering with Sweet Baby Inc. that are going to die on day one, just like this game did, just like Tales of Kinzarazal did, and it's only going to get a matter of time before nobody wants to work with Sweet Baby Inc. or they're going to close down and rebrand as something else. So anyway, guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Hope you did enjoy it. If you did, consider leaving me a subscribe. I would greatly appreciate it. Don't forget to like the video, comment, let me know what you thought, and I'll see you guys on the next one. Hypnotic out.